Thank you very much for that gracious introduction. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So as we transition through, I will just tell you to go to the next slide or the next page so we can keep up with the presentation. So we see this is patient access of records and HIPAA, new focus for compliance and guidelines. So if you jump to the next slide, a little bit about the objectives for today. Really, what this is all based off of, patient access, comes under the HIPAA privacy rules. So we're going to cover that. We're going to understand what protected health information actually is. We'll look at the 18 specific identifiers of PHI. Understanding permitted and authorized disclosures. This is something that organizations struggle with, at least in my experience. So we'll clarify what permitted and authorized disclosures are. Understanding what patient rights are in their medical records access under HIPAA and what the organization's responsibilities are. We'll cover what a HIPAA data breach is and what happens if it occurs, and we'll finish up with some fines and penalties, and we'll look at some actual case examples. So jumping to the next page, HIPAA violations in medical identity theft cases are occurring at an alarming rate in this country. Here's just a few examples of what's going on. And it happens so frequently. I follow the industry on a very close basis, and it's occurring almost on a daily basis, new reports of HIPAA breaches or medical identity theft cases, which means the U.S. Congress has taken an active interest in making sure that we as Americans, our health records are secure, and the responsibilities organizations have to make sure those records are secure, and also when patients want to access their records, making sure that providers understand what the rules and the requirements are. So moving on to what is HIPAA. We hear the term all the time, but what does it exactly stand for? The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. And what HIPAA did is it set the federal statutory basis for establishing standards for the privacy and the security of protected health information. We're going to look at some of those privacy requirements today. But I normally start off my conferences with going through some of these definitions. I just want to make sure that we all have the same fundamental understanding as we move through the rest of the presentation when we'll be using some acronyms. So I want to cover HITECH, and this is the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Care Act. This was passed in 2009. What HITECH, about one of the things it was all about, was promoting the adoption and meaningful use of health information technology. It addresses privacy and security concerns associated with transfers of electronic health information. And if you look at the last bullet on this page, it was originally enacted as a stimulus for providing financial incentives to organizations for demonstrating meaningful use, really converting over to electronic health records. Now what it says here is that after 2015 that penalties would be levied for failing to demonstrate such use. I've yet to see penalties imposed, but that's what legislation was all about under HITECH. To the next page, omnibus rule. And there are some patient privacy issues associated with omnibus. If you utilize electronic health records, a patient can get a copy of their records in electronic form. Another thing that omnibus provided is that patients, if they want to pay out of pocket and they tell their providers not to file a claim with their insurance company, then that is their right under the omnibus rule, which is the most recent part of HIPAA legislation. There's also a couple issues that are associated with the marketing side under HIPAA. That omnibus prohibits the sale of individuals' health information without their permission. Something that was a lot more common years ago. A lot of that has tended to die down in the industry, but it does still go on. And again, this latest part of legislation wanted to make sure that this is reinforced a little bit more for the patients. So moving to the next slide, when we talk about patient access of records and HIPAA, it's real all mandated by the HIPAA privacy rule. And like I said, we're going to spend a significant part of this conference today going over the privacy rule. You really need to understand the ins and the outs of the privacy rule.